Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for Tuesday, the 16th of March. All right, now let's have a look where the week starts. US equity markets in the positive. Okay, NASDAQ bouncing back a little bit. It's so no real major leads here. The key things to be looking at, obviously, the treasuries. Now, the 10-year was up at 1.657, I think, yesterday. So it's just dribbled off a touch, right? So the looks like the 30 is still up there as well. So the treasuries haven't really done a lot, right? And we're waiting for the next round of data. We've got the Federal Reserve meeting this week, which will go a long way to determining what happens with the treasury yields. There may be some commentary about that coming up through the Fed. So right now, with that sort of stabilization of the treasury yields, you see a bit of a positive bounce back in the equity markets. The major pairs, well, the clocks have just reset. We're just through 5 p.m. New York. So there's no clear uniformity here across the major pairs. One key thing just on this page, having a look at the volatility index, the market's not really concerned about too much, with volatility coming back down once again, sort of just dipping back below 20. And that's my sort of threshold for, potential volatility in the market. Now, there's a couple of key things happening here that you need to keep an eye on. Now, one of the sort of bigger news stories, Germany, Italy, France suspend their AstraZeneca shots, okay, amid safety fears. Now, this is where a bit of a geopolitical storm can sort of erupt. There's possible serious side effects. And then you got the WHO, right, the World Health Organization. Now, this is where it came back to during the pandemic. Who's controlling that? Whether it's Gates, you've got the Chinese, who's running, because the WHO are saying, no, it's got nothing to do with that, which is, obviously you'd have to say that. The key things we're looking for is the week is going to be dominated as we come into it with the Fed meeting. That's going to be the key part of it. And also, I'll come back and tell you the economic data we've got today. There's some key numbers coming out. But when you have a look at the major pairs, now if there's no major breaking news over the weekend, the currencies usually just feel their way around again. You can see the dollar index just pushing both sides of, current short-term trend lines. Same with the euro, sterling, right? I think there's so much positive things built into the sterling price. I think it's got to go down. And if the EU is shutting down AstraZeneca, well, you know what? This whole euphoria around the UK getting all these vaccine shots, it could really bite them on the butt if this stuff turns out to be not so good. So just keep an eye on that. They are, like, everything that you could possibly think of is built in. Now, the EU are starting legal action against Britain. Apparently, they've changed some bilateral trade agreements with Northern Ireland. That's something that is going to possibly build as well. Another negative impact. So everything's positive on sterling. I can see it going south big time if one or two things fit into place. Aussie and Kiwi, well, they're just sort of banging away sideways. No real heartbeat, right? They're all sort of based on the dollar. So we're waiting for US dollar direction before we get things going. We've got that new level of, comfort, I guess, in dollar CAD around 124.80. I think it's like 3-year highs for the CAD. That's going to start hurting the economy at some stage. Dollar yen just cruising sideways, as is dollar Swiss. So that's the major pairs, right? So there's nothing really happening just yet, but we're getting a build up of pressure. Now, what you need to do is, well, I will be doing anyway, suggest you do, is keep an eye on the key data that's coming out, right? Because the data is now really coming into play. Australia, the home price index, well, the housing market has been a big raw nerve for the central bank. The zoo economic sentiment numbers, well worth checking out for any major changes there to do with euro. And then you come back down here, we've got US retail sales and US industrial production and capacity utilization numbers, right? So these numbers here, with the Fed coming up, they could give us a bit of a short-term lead into what the dollar's doing, or just give us a bit more. These numbers, unlike CPI, say unemployment, GDP, these numbers are building numbers around the macroeconomic profile of the dollar, of the US economy, right? So if we start to see positive numbers here, where you're going to start to expect to see more positive numbers across the board. So you've got to keep an eye on this. Of course, the Fed will be the key component to where the dollar goes this week, but keep an eye on this as we go through things. So not a lot to do just at the moment. If you're looking for opportunities through the Asian session, I'll be keeping an eye on the US equities. That's possibly where we might see, if there's any sort of random news out, that's where you can see the impact on the equity markets. Of course, keep an eye on the bond prices. Remember, bond prices lower, negative, yields higher, and vice versa. So if the bond prices come off a touch, and you can see the daily change here, positive. If they start going negative, then we start to see an increase in the yields. That should see the dollar rally. And that's pretty much it. There's, I tell you what, we're getting back closer to normal markets. So when I see news like this around the vaccines, it's a little bit of a concern because this could really sort of roll into something much bigger, much more of a bigger geopolitical issue. And especially when we're starting to look at treasuries, equities, and the macroeconomic data is connecting, this is a bit of a worry, right? So hopefully it doesn't escalate into something as massive as the pandemic itself, and we can keep an eye on things. I'll put out a weekly release here shortly on the best trade setups, and we'll go from there, see if we can't actually sort of focus in on one or two specific pairs which have clearer direction. At this point, you can see the trading activity on most pairs really diffused the momentum that was built up with that dollar strength. Very clear euro weakness. We have to wait and see. I'll go through the charts and see what I can find. Anyway, have a good trade day. All the best. Cheerio.